to continue the tradition of surrender.
Right, we'll stay with those visuals in one way or the other, but let's continue making sense of what we're watching. John Simpson is still our guest, live to us via our video link from Oxford. He's the World Affairs editor at the BBC and an author as well. John, I have no doubt you've been following what's been taking place in the last 10 minutes or so. The sense I'm getting is that the official oath has now been taken. Help us distill what has just happened and what it means.
Well, I mean, the key moment was when that official said, long live the king. That was the moment at which Charles III officially became king. He actually became king at the moment of the Queen's death, but this was the kind of official kind of putting the seal on the whole thing. And the rest of it, frankly, I mean, I'm terribly impressed that you would carry on broadcasting it. It was kind of just the boring bit of the meetings, like, you know, any other business. It's got to be done, it's got to be formalized, but not terribly exciting, I'm afraid.
Interesting you say that. I mean, how much attention do you reckon this ceremony is actually getting in Britain? I mean, do you get the sense that ordinary Brits, perhaps other people who have an interest in the monarchy itself, would follow something like this from the start right till its end?
Oh, a lot of people will be watching this. I mean, our own BBC News yesterday was getting audiences of 22 million in Britain. And, of course, around the world, it would have been in hundreds and hundreds of millions. So, I mean, no, I don't think anybody really wants to hear sort of official voices droning on like that for too long. But they do want that moment, I think, of ceremony. You know, most countries, Britain's not the only one to want a touch of ceremony. I mean, I was privileged enough to be on the platform when Nelson Mandela was sworn in as the new president of South Africa in 1994, one of the high points of my entire life. And, you know, you want it to be, you want a little bit of kind of official flummery. You want a sense that this is a big moment for a country, and this is our equivalent in many ways. I just wanted to make a point to you earlier, though, about how Britain itself has changed, and this is something which I don't think a lot of countries outside Britain understand. We've just got a new government under Liz Truss. The top 4 positions in that government are all held by people who are not white males. There isn't a single white male in the top 4 positions. There's a woman prime minister, and there's a black chancellor of the exchequer, there's a black minister of defence, and there's a black minister of foreign affairs. This is extraordinary, and the Queen oversaw all this from being an entirely, almost entirely white country in 1953 to a country where the top issues of government are decided by people of different backgrounds.
Fascinating that, because what it also, I guess, allows us to do now is have a discussion around how this radically different Britain might view the monarchy itself in a context where this moment has revived criticism around the monarchy's legacy, around things like colonialism. How much of a debate do you reckon is happening around those kind of issues?
Well, I think there is, of course, a debate going on about it, and I think that this country, Britain, is having to come to terms with its own past, just as other people are coming to terms with a different sort of Britain. But, I mean, I think the real thing about the monarchy is that just as under the Queen, so under this new king, it's a kind of centralizing element which keeps people together and it ensures that there's continuity. This is a different country from what it was when the Queen took over in the early 50s, but because of having a monarchy like this, it seems to have been absolutely seamless, and people have accepted these extraordinary changes in our life, and the debate will go on, of course, but I don't think it'll affect the position of the king, and I think you'll find that as he gets into the job more, he'll start to tap in to the real support and love that people, and not just in this country, had for the Queen herself.
Yeah. There's been continuity, but there's also been a lot of turbulence within the royal house itself. I mean, you know, it was interesting to hear yesterday King Charles mentioning his love, for instance, of Harry and Meghan, who we know have also grabbed headlines for their decision to essentially give up their powers and privileges within the royal family. How do you reckon something like that will unfold with King Charles now at the helm? Keeping in mind, of course, that Charles is Harry's father, and perhaps that dynamic, too, is something not to be ignored.
No, absolutely. And I mean, like, as always happens with these things, you know, the family and the dynamics within the family can be very important. And of course, you know, these things are not kept quiet nowadays as they would have been in the Queen's earlier years. I mean, everybody knows about it. And you know, both Meghan and Harry are, you know, constantly on television programs giving their version of what happened. I mean, it must, I don't know, because I'm not privy to these things, but it must have made the Queen's last months pretty miserable, really, to have her grandson kind of, you know, saying the things that he did, and the grandson's wife being really very hostile, and you know, Prince Harry sort of saying, yeah, I agree. And I'm sure that this is an important thing for King Charles, that he'll want to bring them back in some way into the community. I'm sure he'll succeed, actually. I mean, if you looked at Prince Harry's face when he rushed to the Queen's deathbed and didn't get there in time, simply because of where he was and the long distance that he had to get to it. You know, you could imagine that he must be asking himself, you know, is this the right way to carry on conducting the family relationship?
Yeah. I mean, the dynamic between Harry, Meghan, and the rest of the family has also allowed an opportunity to really unpack what takes place within the monarchy itself. And as you mentioned, in the past, it almost felt like this is kind of sacrosanct. You don't speak about what takes place. Are you getting a sense that that attitude is changing? And if so, do you reckon it bids well for this institution?
Oh, yeah, I think, well, I'm a journalist. Of course, I think that openness is the answer to just about everything. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. I do think that a lot of people in this country who really welcomed Meghan as the, whatever she was, Countess of Duchess of Sussex, really welcomed the thought that somebody, a person of colour, was coming into the royal family. It looked for a little bit as though Prince Harry and Meghan were going to be the part of the family that dealt everywhere with the Commonwealth. What a magnificent thing that was. And I think a lot of people felt real sadness that they chose to walk away from that and not to be part of that. And who knows, I mean, it's not impossible that they may decide they want to come back and play, if not a role in Britain, because Meghan doesn't seem to want to live in Britain, but a role in the Commonwealth itself, travelling around, seeing people, doing some of the things that the Queen used to do.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how the British people feel about that if it were to happen. But help us understand, John, what happens next. I mean, we're seeing, for instance, now in frame Boris Johnson signing what I think is the proclamation itself, being followed by several other people. We're told similar ceremonies are likely to unfold during this 10-day mourning period. Which of these other salient moments do you reckon we should look out for?
Well, I think the big thing will be, first of all, the lying in state of the Queen in Westminster Hall in London, where all the kings and the great people of the country, Winston Churchill, for instance, lay in state there when he died in 1965. And the Queen will be there, and there will be days and days, 3 days, I think, in which people will be circling round the coffin in silence, paying their last respects. And I noticed a little sign that said that this will be for 23 hours a day. So, because I think an awful lot of people will want to do that, I said to I've got a 16-year-old son, and, you know, teenagers are not the greatest ones to be interested in you know, this kind of subject. I was pretty amazed when he said, "Oh, I'd like to go and do that." And I think that will be, I think an awful lot of people will want to pay their last respects, as my son clearly feels that he wants to do. And then after that, at some stage, probably in May or something, we'll have the coronation, when the sadness has passed, when the English winter, will be gone, we hope, and May will bring sunshine and blossom and happiness, and we'll have the coronation. But my feeling is that they'll want to strip down an awful lot of this stuff, that, too much of the old flummery is not what's wanted any longer. So much shorter service than the Queen had, which went on for hours and hours in 1953. Much shorter, much simpler, probably a bit less of the sort of, grand uniforms and so on. And then that is the moment when, King Charles III will really start to be able to express himself as he thinks he ought to.
Yeah, well, with credit to your son, I think you'd have to be really detached to not realize that, the winds of change are blowing, no matter how you see the monarchy and its legacy. John Simpson, what a pleasure it is to speak to you. Thank you so much for making time to help us make sense of what's taking place in the UK.